and welcome everyone in today's session. And we are going to talk about facts and myths around Scrum. Okay, we'll keep the topic very light, and as part of the Scrum for Beginners program, this is one of the section being covered by me. Who am I? So I'm a passionate agilist, founder of Twin Flames Consulting Services in India. I work as an enterprise agile coach and I'm an agile consultant. I'm also a Scrum ambassador and part of the global group. Apart from that, I also work with Peter on personal agility. I'm a personal agility coach and trainer. Apart from that, I am a SAFE program consultant. I lead Personal Agility India chapter, and one of the volunteer of leading this chapter is Anbu Joseph, who is present currently with us. I also focus on cultural transformation in organization, and I work as a life coach. Talking about my specialization, I'm an NLP and emotional intelligence coach. Apart from that, talking about my personal side, I'm an adventurous traveler, which has of course taken a pause currently because of pandemic, but I'm hoping we are going to resume this soon. All right. So as you have been attending the various sessions done by Scrum ambassadors, let's play Scrum. Let's play Scrum and revolve around fact and myth. And I would really appreciate if you could just send your response on the chat. So this is the first question. Documentation is important in Scrum. Is it a fact or myth? You can send your response on chat. Okay. Okay. So we are getting a mixed response, and that's the beauty of having this session, because we are going to get more clarity around the basics of Scrum, right? All right, let's see. Oh, documentation is important and in Scrum. That's a myth. Documentation is important. Sorry. And documentation, we focus more on working software. So towards the end of the sprint, we try to produce the working software apart, and documentation is not the major focus. All right. So Scrum does not define documents for project requirements. It's not mandatory, although there is some limitation on documentation. There is no role for a manager in Scrum. Is this a fact or myth according to you? Yeah. Okay. Again, getting a mixed response. Okay. Would you like to unmute yourself and speak about your response? Why do you think that it is a myth or fact? Yeah.
I would love to.
Yeah, please.
Scrum teams are self-managing. That's the fact.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Anyone else who is saying it's a myth?
I would say there is a role for a manager, but it's not the Scrum Master that is the manager, which might be probably confusing for some people.
Okay, so there's no role for a manager in Scrum, and that's a fact. Because in Scrum, it's not defined. Scrum does not define about the role of a line manager or a manager or a project manager. So that what happens to the managerial roles or to the managers when we adopt Agile, the duties of the project manager are divided into Scrum roles. That gets divided into Scrum Master, Product Owner, right? So this is a fact. Agile projects have no plan.
So Shweta, can I ask a tricky question? If Scrum doesn't define the role of line manager, does that mean your company's not going to have any anymore?
Absolutely not.
Okay. Jacqueline, why not?
Well, because in most organizations, management is who maybe the Scrum team would report metrics to, or in some other way. I'm not exactly sure how they would be as important as businesses seem to think that they are. But I believe, like you were saying, they create order out of chaos. And so there is in most businesses a management system, maybe that reports for, their what they're doing, not so much as a team, but individually, or, even payroll or whatnot.
Okay, so your argument is that there are managers, there will continue to be managers, and there are duties that are not defined in Scrum that might still be handled by a manager. Did I understand that correctly?
Absolutely. I think that's something that's going to be changing, but yeah, I think as of right now, that's how things are done.
Okay. Anyone think it means there aren't going to be any more managers? We're going to, I don't know, fire them all or reassign them, or? Shweta, what's your experience? What happens to managers when companies start to do Scrum?
As per my experience, either the manager, depending upon his experience level, he takes up the role of a Scrum Master, or if he's keen on in client facing role, then he takes up the role of a product owner. So my experience, this has happened. Or otherwise the manager completely segregates himself from Scrum team, and he gets into the people management role.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I've seen that the people who have management roles are often valuable, and so they find new things to do. What they find to do depends on, kind of what's needed for them. I have heard that over time companies need less management because the teams kind of, as I say, they can handle the chaos themselves. They can create order out of chaos. That's what the self-organization is about. A little bit surprising that the manager doesn't need it, or that they don't need a manager to do that, but usually they can do it. Okay, so I didn't mean to take the talking stick from you, so let me just pass it back to you, Shweta. What's next?
No problem, Peter. Okay, let's move to the next one. Agile projects have no plan. What do you think? Is it a fact or a myth? Okay. Okay. Any more response? Rohit, would you like to talk? Why do you think it's a myth?
I think with the product vision, when you say there's a product goal it defines a plan for you in the long term. So that itself is a plan. I consider that as a plan, which something which used to be in the waterfall as well, where the end road. So that's why I think it's a myth. We do have a plan. Although, yeah, you take into consideration the changing environment and all over but at the end, where you are going, that end goal. And then, of course, you inspect and adapt according to if there is a change in the market and all but still a plan is there. You can't go without a plan.
Okay, okay. And who would you like to put your point of view? Okay, let's see. Yeah, agile projects have no plan. So what happens? Agile projects do have plan, and planning is a continuous process. So what do we do with every sprint? We keep on planning out things as per the latest information that we get, right? And that's a continuous project, continuous process, and agile projects can and should revise the plan every sprint. That's exactly what we do. And that is why agile is preferred also, right? Because we keep on updating ourselves as per the latest requirement, or we keep on updating our plans also as per the requirement and the priority of the customer. So yes, we do have plan, but that keeps on getting updated. Okay, Scrum is only for software. Okay.
Again.
Yeah. So, Nicolo, would you like to say why you are mentioning it as a...
Yeah, I think it can be used or adapted to different fields, not only software development, although much of the talk around Scrum and agility in general is around software development. It can be used in other situations as well.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Nagesh, want to add?
Yeah, so it can be used in general life, even the Scrum inspect and adapt, where we can, like, if we do any mistakes in our daily life, we can correct them. Even for example, if you take cooking as an example, if sometimes if you do some if you keep some salt or anything more while cooking, you can next time you can correct that when you are doing it. Does this make sense? Hello,
Okay.
am I audible?
Yeah, you are audible. Okay. And according to me, Scrum is something, or Agile is something which can be implemented. The best place to implement it is on yourself. That exactly personal agility talks about. How do you apply agility or Scrum on yourself? And we already have the creator of personal agility present over here. So Peter, would you like to say a couple of words on this, since it is directly related?
Okay, well, I thought that was a really interesting statement. I also heard that in one of the talks. I'm not sure who said it, but they said basically, maybe this was Jan, he said, if a management team comes to a development team and says, do Scrum, the proper response is, well, why don't you lead by example and do Scrum first? Okay, and the reason for that is so that they actually can speak from direct experience. Now, the problem is that many leaders, they're not really part of a team. They happen to be in a group that has a similar function, and they're responsible for teams and they're responsible for organizations. And they may not even believe that the teamwork is really appropriate to what they do. And if they don't believe that, it's really hard to convince them. What can be really helpful, though, is to talk about the values and the principles of Scrum. Okay, and when we take it down, we say, okay, our highest goal is to satisfy the customer. Well, in your own life, what's your highest goal? And you say, well, that's kind of harder to say, but we can kind of summarize it with, well, there's something out there that really matters, and what really matters to you, and that already gives you, the idea of kind of how to prioritize, and then, well, how do you spend your time? And how does that relate to stuff that matters? And how much of the time that you spent actually relates to something that matters? And particularly executives and leaders, they discover a lot of their time is taken up with meetings that aren't really much fun to be in. and they consume all their time, and they have no time to actually do something. Think of your poor chief product owner who has 25 recurring meetings scheduled every week. When do you actually get anything done? And so by starting to ask that question, what really matters, that makes it possible to apply agility really in almost any context. Okay, and that's the start of it. The other thing which I found, I'm going to share this flower again. Whoop. Let's see. Is it okay if I borrow the screen for a moment? Shweta? Yeah. Okay. If you think about Scrum, the way it's done in IT, you kind of get stuck. You say, well, do we have to do story points? Do we have to do estimation? What a waste of time, blah, 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 blah. If you take Scrum and reduce it down to its essence, think about these 5 values. What do they mean? Focus is something which is usually a big challenge for organizations. The opposite of focus is multitasking, and multitasking is so bad for your performance, I call it evil. Okay, but then you look at these simple statements. Okay, we want to inspect and adapt at regular intervals. We want to have tangible results at regular intervals. We want to delegate problems to teams rather than tasks, because if I delegate a task, I have to control the task. If I can delegate the responsibility, all I need is for them to inform me that things are on track. So it's a very, very different situation. So if you take it at this level, you could apply it really anywhere. I'm doing it with a company right now as we try to reinvent ourselves before we run out of money. And it's that being in a startup is not for the weak of heart, but it's the doing Scrum has really transformed the organization. If you look at where we are now compared to where we were 4 months ago, you wouldn't recognize the place. So I would say this is definitely a myth. And in fact, I think the people who can most benefit from it are the leadership of your organizations. Back to you, Shweta.
Okay, thank you. Thanks. Okay, so so Scrum is not only for software, but it works all around, provided you practice that on yourself, right? And one of the best example which I am facing right now is, of course, I have applied Scrum on myself because I'm a huge fan of personal agility, and I've been practicing it for a long time. And one of the clients with whom I'm working currently, they are into snacks and confectionaries, and and we are having a good experience that has nothing to do with software, but we got them implemented Agile very well and successfully, and they are really gaining the best benefit out of it, and that's very interesting to see that. Okay, and Scrum is suitable actually for solving many kinds of complex problems, and it is not defined by any kind of domain. Yeah, so it's more modeled on patterns for product development rather than it's confining in software industry. All right, Scrum, we have been hearing Scrum is very difficult to follow. Scrum has very strict rules. What are your views on this? Is it a fact or it looks like a myth? Okay. Okay. That's interesting. Okay, I would really love to hear from you all. Why do you think it is a myth? Can you unmute yourself and please talk about it? Jacqueline, would you like to?
Sure. Scrum is a framework based on a methodology of Agile. So there is a framework that creates some sort of structure, but rules, however, are more for management style. This is leadership and being a team, and everyone is kind of their own leader within this team. So rules just they would seem completely like they don't belong here. Sorry, it's really early and I can't get my thoughts together.
Okay. Oh, Scrum has very strict rules, and that's a fact. Why? Scrum is a mindset, and it's not, very easy to change our mindset. But if you adopt the mindset, then definitely they will seem natural to you and it becomes easy, right? But if you are not adopting that mindset, then definitely it's not going to help us. So, okay, two participants has raised their hand. Yeah, please go ahead.
You know, I think this is a really interesting statement. Okay, and the couple years ago, you know, especially Ken Schraber, to a lesser extent Jeff Sutherland, they were talking about Scrum Butt, and the idea was that, oh, there are all these companies struggling to do Scrum, and if they would just follow the rules the way they were in the Scrum Guide, then all of their problems would go away. And you know, if you understood Scrum, then you got into a situation and you would know exactly what to do. And they said, follow the rules. And of course, this is just the opposite of what you should be doing, what we want to, and I think this is a realization which has come in the more recent versions of the Scrum Guide, where they say, actually, no, it's not about being prescriptive. It's about getting intelligent people together and have them solve the problem. So I'm thinking we might need to revise the answer to this one, because it seems like the world is changing, that they're realizing that this rule-based approach doesn't work very well. Now, having said that, there are a couple of things in Scrum, and I actually think the authors of Scrum still do talk more in terms of rules. But like you could say, okay, we have to produce something every sprint. Is that a rule? Well, it's there to help you. Okay, having tangible results every sprint, you know, really makes your life a lot easier. Your trust issues with your stakeholders go away. You got something to demonstrate. Maybe you've got something that you can actually get value from. And, you know, so on the whole, having this stuff is in your own interest. Okay, and so I tend to look at the rules of Scrum. Well, first of all, I consider them to be friendly recommendations, which are, you know, based on a lot of empirical evidence that they lead to good results. And, you know, every once in a while you might bend the rules, and it's okay to ask for forgiveness. In fact, you know, it's your project, so you kind of get to do what you want. But the rules of Scrum are there to help you. Okay, and you know, if you kind of strive to follow the intent of Scrum as closely as you can, usually that's going to bring you into a pretty good place. But if you can't, don't worry about it. Be nice to yourself. Don't beat up someone because, you know, they were you know 5 minutes late on the, or a day late on the sprint review or something like that. There are worse things that can happen, you know, than something like that. And causing a lot of fighting and dissension because you're not following the rules is usually, in my experience, that's been counterproductive.
But you know, if we talk about in terms of partial adoption of Scrum, then definitely it's not going to help us, right? So if we just say that, oh, I'm having you know, a small team, and that is why we are agile and we are following Scrum and we are having daily stand-ups and we are having Scrum and we are agile, right? So again, when we talk about in terms of adopting partially, that is not going to work, right? So in that scenario, of course, Scrum has a strict rule. If you are adopting Scrum, then you have to adopt it wholeheartedly or fully, right? Otherwise, it's not going to give you the desired result.
Oh, we could get into an argument here. That would be really entertaining for that. But, follow the rules. No, reinvent the rules. Be inspired by the rules.
I had something to add if I could.
Yeah, please.
So I like to look at it like this. Okay, everyone is building a house, right? And each house, they have to have walls, right? That's a rule. They have to have a certain amount of exits. That's a rule. So that could be looked at as a framework, right? But that doesn't mean that each and every wall has to be the same. Each and every window doesn't have to be the same. They can design their own within the rules of that framework, right? So it gives the the flexibility and agility to people who want things to be a little different, but are still following that framework. So that's why I was all about no rules, because it makes, it rules to me, that makes me want to get up and run. I don't like that word, but that's not to say anyone else does. Some people really like rules.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Affect us in liberation. If you are a great fan of, having a liberating mind, then definitely rules stand just opposite. Yeah, Peter, you were.
Actually, I just want to say that's a really good point, because rules give people security. If there are rules and people know what to expect, then they know how to behave. And that makes them safe. And so that kind of having rules that are sensible and consistently applied, actually can be very good for things like psychological safety. Because, as I say, you see this in child rearing. If your kids don't know what to expect, they become very they themselves become very unsettled and unpredictable, because they just don't know what's expected of them. If, on the other hand, you have clear rules that make sense and you can explain them, then your kids they feel much safer. Okay, and they grow up a bit more what's the word? A bit more rounded as personalities. It makes their lives easier. So I think there's a tension here between kind of following the rules and being able to change the rules, and not killing yourself around the rules. I guess my main objection is kind of the Shuha-Re mentality, which just says, oh, your shoe, follow the rules. Don't question, just follow the rules. Whereas in Scrum, it's about getting the whole team to think. And so there's this, compliance versus thinking versus, the rules actually give us security and safety and the ability to move forward effectively. And I think that's the tension that we're trying to navigate here.
Yes, I think that's maybe why they called it a framework instead of a rule book.
Although Ken Schraber does he says this is the rules of the game. For him, Scrum is like soccer. Okay, you define the rules of soccer. Now, you don't have to play by the rules of soccer, but if you play by different rules, please don't call it soccer. It's something else. And maybe that's a way to think of it.
True.
That was an interesting discussion. If a feature is too big to finish in a sprint, you may extend the sprint. How does it sound to you?
No, that's against the rules.
Okay.
Feature is too big to fail.
Okay, that's a myth. Creating finished software or any work or any product is difficult and requires good engineering practices and make functions smaller to fit in the idea is towards end of every sprint, we should get something, workable, right? And a sprint review is an opportunity to inspect and adapt the product which occurs at regular intervals. So at that time, we can just think about, or we could, retrospect on how small we can break the entire work into so that it gets finished in the same sprint. Okay, there are few responses as well. Yeah, okay, next. Only product owner knows the vision of the product. Okay. Let's see. Yeah. So the product vision needs to be transparent to whole team, so that the team works towards the shared vision, and hence the vision needs to be transparent to the whole team, and it is made available by the product owner. Scrum Master is accountable that productivity is increasing. Okay, so I can see a response that's a myth. Can you unmute yourself and talk about your response? Why do you think so?
The Scrum Master is accountable for the team facilitating and coaching the team, not exactly for the productivity. I mean, they want the team to be more productive. That's why they do retrospectives and figure out their velocity. But I don't believe, and I may be wrong, that the Scrum Master is absolutely accountable for this. It's more that they're that leader who comes in and coaches and helps them understand how they can better themselves each sprint.
Okay. So if we talk about accountability part, then, of course, Scrum Master is accountable because he also is a coach for the team. Okay. But when we say, productivity is everybody's responsibility. So here comes a between accountability and responsibility.
Shweta,
So,
if you say Scrum Master will help, then it's up. We can accept it, but accountable, I think, which looks like it's a myth.
And then
yes, if I say about accountability part, then Scrum Master is accountable for the productivity of the team. But if we talk about responsibility, but of course, each and every team member is responsible towards their own action, and they should be working towards better ways of working. And that exactly we also try to find out during the retrospective. Okay, but responsibility lies with everyone, but of course the accountability lies with the Scrum Master. So suppose the productivity of the team is not increasing, then the Scrum Master tries to coach the team and finds out what is the issue, and he tries to resolve those impediments if there is any, or he tries to remove the roadblock if there is any. Okay. Peter, you want to add anything to this?
yes, Shweta, Pandu here.
Yeah.
As per my knowledge, like a Scrum Master will facilitate the Scrum process. Is not accountable for anything. Project owner and the dev team are the accountability for the productivity increasing. That's what I feel. Scrum Master is not accountable for anything. His role is to only facilitation.
As a coach, of course, he is accountable for having a high performance team. Yeah. So he tries to enforce that definitely in the Scrum team.
And I would say,
Shweta, you mentioned tries to help, correct? That means Scrum Master can help on that productivity and increasing, but accountable is bit
Yes.
looks like it's not a fact. Yeah.
Yeah. That's what I feel like. He is not accountable. He will help the team like increasing the productivity. If there is any blockers, he will try to resolve the blockers and everything. He will try to improve the team productivity by like a scaling up them, like a reskilling, or like a maybe some architect or someone can like a plan session with the team. He can help with regard to that, not to accountability. That's what I will feel.
Okay. Yeah, Peter.
Could I borrow the screen share from you for a second? I'd like to show you something, because this is something that the Scrum Guide, the latest Scrum Guide, made very clear. And I'd like to, I did an excerpt of that because, in the previous versions of the Scrum Guide, they talked about roles, okay, and roles are responsible for this and they're responsible for that. The latest version of the Scrum Guide talks about accountabilities. Accountability is what you're expected to do or what you're expected to produce, the value that you're expected to bring. And so basically, this is a summary of the key key messages from the Scrum Guide. The Scrum team as a whole is accountable for creating a valuable, useful increment. Okay, this tangible, we call this tangible value, every sprint. The the developers are responsible for creating that increment. The product owner is accountable that that increment is valuable. Okay, so create it plus make it valuable. That's the product owner and the developer. And the Scrum Master is accountable for the teams that, well, first of all, that they do Scrum, and second, that they the effectiveness of the team. Now, notice how that's phrased a little bit differently. This isn't about, increasing the number of story points, because it's easy to game story points, but it is about, the sponsor's money is being spent on the team. Okay, and so the idea is if the team is more effective, presumably the sponsor is going to get a better return on their investment. Okay, so this is why we have a Scrum Master. If this weren't the case, there'd be no justification for having a Scrum Master. Okay, and in fact, I think Scrum Masters, one problem with Scrum Masters is that they're often, they got their hands tied behind their back. They're not actually allowed to do anything to improve the team's performance. And then companies start wondering, well, why do we need this guy with his hands tied behind his back? Okay, and so that's the, the Scrum Master is accountable for what the team is doing. Okay, not for the product, but for their performance.
Yes, for the performance. They are
Agree, Peter.
one of the main responsibilities that comes under Scrum Master role is to have or to harness the team's potential. So he aims at having a high performance team, and that again comes under this. Okay.
Okay, Shweta, Peter, thanks for clarification.
Yeah. Product owner defines and implements standards within the team. What are your views on this? I'm sure. Okay. Okay. Okay, it's a myth. Jacqueline. Okay. So product owner defines and implements a standard within the team. It's a myth. It's actually a Scrum Master who defines and implements standards within the team. He, of course, he is the guardian of the Scrum team, and he owns the entire Scrum process, and hence he is the one who defines the standards within the team, all the agreement and other things. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about what is Scrum and Bad Scrum. Scrum accelerates human effort. It doesn't matter what that effort is. I'm sorry, somebody has raised the hand.
Sorry, just a quick question.
Yeah.
When you mention standards, what exactly are we talking about here in the previous slide?
Okay, it's more about we talk about Scrum Scrum rules, the Scrum processes, the ceremonies, events, when it is going to happen, the frequency, the time boxing, and all those things.
Okay, see now, thank you for that.
Yeah.
I have a question, Shweta.
Yes.
When you said that PO is a guardian of Scrum, what does it mean?
No, Scrum Master. Scrum Master is the guardian of Scrum team because he continuously works for the team, Scrum team. Okay, it's like he's the parent and the Scrum team is the baby of the Scrum Master. We usually call that because he's the one who nurtures the Scrum team, Okay, and he takes care of the team, he stands by the team, he understands the team from all aspects, from, you know, even from the psychological aspect, he takes care of all the things, so that he abides by that the Scrum team is working towards its high potential. You know, the productivity of the team is not compromised. Nobody, no outsiders comes and, you know, talk to the Scrum team directly and assign some work. So all these kind of things are taken care by the Scrum Master, and that is why we say Scrum Master is the guardian of the Scrum team. Yeah, Peter, you have raised your hand.
Yes, I was thinking about the issue of standards, and I think it really depends what kind of standards. So, you know, you've talked about, you know, the Scrum Master, you know, as kind of the guardian of Scrum and ensuring that the team does Scrum, or, you know, I would say that they do pretty good Scrum, not that they do perfect Scrum. I've given up on trying to do perfect Scrum, but at least pretty good Scrum. You know, what's interesting is we have these questions, you know, what, why, and how. Okay, and kind of who is responsible for what, you know, and for me, the product owner is ultimately responsible for why. Okay, you know, this is the, you know, because that why is very closely related to that valuable question. Okay, and so the product owner understands why we're doing what we're doing at any given point in time. The team is responsible for how. Okay, that is, you know, what tasks do we need and how do we implement and things, you know, everything about actually delivering the solution. That belongs to the developers, okay, which I still call the team, even though technically they're called developers these days. And the what, this is the zone of collaboration. Okay, you know, this is that discussion that happens with the during backlog refinement, where, you know, we get some sort of wonderful idea from the product owner that you know, kind of doesn't really seem to solve the problem, and the team has to tease out what is the real problem that we're trying to solve and come up with a good description, and then, you know, break it down and come up with acceptance criteria. And that's why, you know, what is more of a zone of collaboration. Now, where are standards? Okay, where do standards fit in? Now, some of the standards, you know, like if you've got, if you're working in a regulated environment and you've got standards for traceability and standards for accountability and standards for this and standards for this, for that come from the FDA, you got to follow those. You don't have any choice about that, you know, and that's, you know, I would say the product owner's got to make sure that something like that gets into the backlog fairly early so that we really do it. But then there are other standards like coding standards and naming conventions and things like that. And these belong in the domain of how. Okay, how are we going to do it? Especially if you've got more than one team that's working on the same code. Well, both of those teams, you know, they're responsible for the how of their work, but they have to collaborate with each other. So they may even need to define standards either within the team or across teams. And that's really, you know, that's really the team and the developers who are responsible for those kinds of standards. Okay, so I'm gonna come back with that last one and say it really depends on what kind of standard that you're talking to, you know, and, you know, how does it map to the what, why, and how? That kind of gives you the answer of who's responsible for it, at least in my humble opinion.
Thanks, Peter. Okay, we are coming towards the end of the session, and before we end, just let's have a small look at good Scrum versus bad Scrum quickly. So good Scrum, daily 15 minutes catch up, that becomes part of good Scrum, and having too many meetings is not you know, really appreciated, because that again overburdens the team, right? And apart from in many places, we have seen that, you know, they mix the Scrum ceremonies and, you know, the meetings, long meetings that is actually scheduled for some other purpose. So they pull in the team in all those meetings where they are not even required to. So yeah, so daily 15 minutes catch up, that catch up is not actually a status meeting or something, but it is mainly to highlight where you are stuck, what are the roadblocks, and what immediately should be sorted out so that the team starts get going quickly. The second one is fix the system and don't fix the people, right? So it's part of the good Scrum, of course, when we say that, you know, Scrum is mainly to accelerate the process And in order to do that, you need to fix the system long approval process, or, and you really don't have to work closely you don't have to be judgmental with the people, and we don't pinpoint or things like that on the Scrum team members specifically. Now, improves team performance is again part of good Scrum. So here the focus is mainly on the team's performance, and hence all the ceremonies, or specifically in retrospective, we find that the focus is towards improving the team's performance, inspecting the team or the way they have worked, and adapting what are the better ways of handling those things. Now, promotes collaboration and status meetings. So the meetings or ceremonies which are there, that is mainly aimed at promoting the collaboration rather than having a status meeting and getting an update from each and every team member. Now, uncover better ways of working rather than blaming team member in retrospective. So here specifically, if we talk about retrospective, that is mainly aimed at uncovering the better ways of working, finding out various alternatives, doing a brainstorming on how can we perform better, and we don't pinpoint on any of the team members. Another part of, another focus area is to eliminate wastage rather than creating or increasing the dependencies. So we identify the dependencies early in the ceremonies like backlog refinement and all, so that we don't really waste time of the team while the sprint is on and we are identifying dependencies and working towards it. And the last one is inspect and adapt. That loop is made specifically short so that we get the feedback sooner and then we work towards improving as per the feedback received. So that's about good Scrum versus bad Scrum. And that's it from my side for today's session. I hope it has brought some insight to you all. And if you have any question, you can just, I open the floor for the question. Okay, thanks for being a wonderful audience and interactive audience. Thanks for your participation.
Thanks, Shweta. Thanks, Peter. It was good.
Thank you so much, both.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us.